This is component 3, paper A1, and we are on to question 3. And this is an experiment with 2 plants, and the difference between them is they appear to have a plastic bag at the top of one and a plastic bag at the bottom of the other one. In A, the plastic bag is around a leaf at the top, and what are they feeding it? Radioactive carbon dioxide. And they're doing the same to plant B, a bag with radioactive carbon dioxide around a leaf at the bottom. Hopefully you are putting 2 and 2 together here. We've got a plant and we're giving it some CO2. We're going to be talking about photosynthesis, and you know all about photosynthesis from GCSE, and we'll do it in more detail later. You should be hoping that you know where the carbon from carbon dioxide is going in photosynthesis. So it's going to make sugars, glucose, then turn into sucrose. It's going around the plant in translocation. Suggest why the plants were left for 24 hours before the parts of the plants were analysed. Well, in scientific experiments, and you've done some as well, you have to leave them for a little while for whatever is going to happen. So in this case it's photosynthesis of this radioactive carbon dioxide allows that to take place, or else you won't get any results from the experiment at all. You need to let this radioactive carbon dioxide, which is just carbon dioxide that they can then detect using things like X-rays or whatever, or just detect radioactivity. It's like it's waving a little flag. You can follow it around the plant. So it's to allow photosynthesis to take place, or time for the labelled CO2 to be metabolized into sugars, and so we can follow that. Photosynthesis of radioactive CO2 to happen. And we're presented with a nice table, and this is radioactivity in counts per minute, using one of those little Geiger counters, Geiger Muller tubes attached to a counter. And we're given the radioactivity in different parts of the plant, in A and B. And we reach some of our maths in part 1, and it wants us to work out percentages. Right, we should be happy with percentages. It gives us a total, and we're just working out percentages in what it gives us. So we reach for Miss Knight's trusty calculator, and we just go...
You brought your own calculator?
I haven't brought my own calculator. I'm going to use your ruler as well.
What?
So fruit pod, we go, right, am I reading the right data here for fruit pod? We've got 9,050, 9050, divided by the total, 23,265, and then times that by 100. And that gives us a very long decimal number indeed. What should I present this number to? Well, we don't want it to be too silly with the number of decimal places, but we don't want to give it too rounded as well. So I'm going to go for 38.9. So if it's 38.899, I'm going to round that up to 1 decimal place on this occasion. Sometimes you can be a little bit unlucky with the number of decimal places that you round it to, but that's okay. And we do the same with the next one. So it is the shoot tip 1125 divided by the total 23,265, and then times that by 100 to make it a percentage, and that is 4.8%. And I could put percentage at the end of those, but it actually says percentage in the question, so I wouldn't necessarily need to. Suggest an explanation for these results. So there is 2 marks here, and so I can probably guess that there's going to be 1 mark for suggesting the fruit pod explanation and 1 mark for the shoot tip explanation. So the most obvious thing is, why are we sending so much of this radioactivity, which is probably CO2 being made into the products of photosynthesis and then sent to the fruit pod? Why are we doing that? What's going on in this little fruit pod? Well, fruit. Why do we eat fruit? Nice and sweet. Why would animals eat fruit? For the same reason, nice and sweet. Lots of sugars there. So it's storing lots of sugars in order to attract animals to eat the fruit and then they distribute the seeds to grow new plants. So that's why. We just need to put that into a shorter sentence. Fruit pod is a region of storage of our carbohydrate, or you could say sugars or products of photosynthesis. And again, what's going on with the shoot? It's a lower number, but it's still showing that sugar is being sent there, and we want to know, why is the sugar being sent to a shoot tip? Well, you looked at a root tip down the microscope, and what did you see when you looked at a root tip? You saw that there was growth and mitosis going on and cell division. Well, it's the same at the tips of the shoots as well. So we can have the shoot tip, and I'm going to say the same words as in the table, is a region of growth. And so that would need energy for that to happen, and the energy is going to come from the sugars. This question, part 3, what are the quantitative differences between the pattern of radioactive carbohydrate translocation in the fruit pod and roots of plant A compared with plant B? Very few people actually got this right, and Miss Knight suggested this will be aimed at the A-star kind of students. And so we look at plant A, and we've got, I'll borrow Miss Nancy's highlighter here. And
play with fire now.
Fruit pod and roots. So fruit pod 9,000, roots 850. And let's have a look. So in plant A and plant B we have got 4,520 and 2,700. So we are comparing plant A to plant B. And so for our fruit pod we're comparing this number of 9,000 against this number of 4,500 roughly. And in very kind of rough terms, plant A has got about twice as much as plant B. And if you look at the roots, plant A 850, plant B 2,700. So plant A is about 900, and if you times that by 3 you get the plant B value of 2,700. So plant B has got 3 times as much, or plant A has got roughly a third. So that's what we are aiming for in that answer, not the actual data itself, even though you'd have our sympathy when it says what are the difference, so that minus that. But it's wanting you to notice in general terms a quantitative relationship. Much better if this question had a relationship in it as well, but there we go. So plant A has twice as much carbohydrate in the fruit pod than plant B, and likewise we can go plant B has 3 times or thrice as much carbohydrate in the roots. Part 4. Name a source and a sink. This answer does not need the word radioactivity in. All of the leaves on these plants are photosynthesizing. It's just that we've picked one out in this experiment to demonstrate that process in. So the source is going to be a leaf, or any leaf, not just the radioactive leaves. So that's my answer there. And as for sinks, anywhere where the sugar, the carbohydrate, is being used or stored. And so the obvious things to go for are the things we've actually talked about. So for example, the fruit pod. But we could have had the tips of the shoot, or we could have suggested from this data even roots, possibly slightly higher. So, but the most obvious one, fruit pod, because that's the whacking big number there. Part 5. What do the results suggest about the direction of movement between the source and the sink in A compared with B? So this was very rare to see anything at all sensible. It's kind of going, well, does the sugar from the leaves go all over the plant equally, or does it go to the nearest sinks? And we can look at this, because we go for plant A. Does the plant send these labelled sugars just to its kind of nearest fruit pods, or does it send it all down to the roots as well? And in plant B we can go, well, the source is kind of right down at the bottom. They picked a leaf down at the bottom. Well, how does that affect what sugar goes where in the plant? Does it tend to go everywhere equally, or does it send sugar to the sinks nearby? And when you look at this, more translocation of this carbohydrate occurs from the leaves to the nearest sink. So in plant A, it tends to send it to the fruit pod, and this is where this question was going. It asked you to compare these values, whereas in plant B it didn't seem to send as much there. But if you look at the roots, plant B, the leaf is down at the bottom, so it's going to be nearest to send the sugars down there. So sometimes in these questions, if you can't think of what the answer, just read through the question again, and quite often these questions lead, one after another in a certain direction. So our answer, more translocation from the leaves to the nearest sink, and that's what the data showed. And that's 9 marks.